and welcome to another World Values Day live conversation. I'm Anna McAfee, and I am so excited to be chatting with Saidat, who is a Canadian children's entertainer. She is a speaker, community leader, and artistic director, and she does a ton of work inspiring children all around values and emotional skills, which well, ultimately aimed at children, but perhaps in adults as well, which we're going to talk about in this conversation. Thank you for joining us, Saidat.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate the space.
Yeah, it's a super cool place to have a conversation.
Yeah.
So, one question that I wanted to ask you first is, can you share one of your values, one of your personal values with us?
Oh, thank you. Well, one of my personal values, I believe, is hope. I feel that because I work with children, that word shows up a lot. I hope this message resonates with them. I hope they have a good time. I hope they see how much they're loved. And I feel for me, hope is what drives me. Hope is what lifts me up when I don't see the good or the answer. Having that hope just shows me that I'm I'm still dreaming, I'm still pushing forward, and change can happen. So I think that's such a beautiful value to have, because when you're hopeless, you stop dreaming. When you're hopeless, you just stop moving, you stop learning, you stop growing. And I've been hopeless before. I've felt that emotion. But to be able to jump right back in that resiliency and say, no, we're going to try again. I think it's a beautiful value to hold close to your heart.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah, hope is a great value, isn't it? And just such a great word for us to use. I guess where I'd love to go from here is to talk about the critical skills that children need to learn, the critical emotional skills that they need to learn. Can you share with us, what those skills are, I guess, and why in your experience, they need to develop those?
Yes. I think the most critical emotional skills that children and adults need is awareness. First of all, awareness. Because if we're not aware of our emotions, like, where are we going? What are we doing? When I was growing up, I think there's two generations, my generation and my parents. I don't think we had the language for our emotions. So like if we had big or strong emotions that someone would think are big or strong, they're like overly happy, or you're bawling on the floor, or you're really excited about something, or you're really upset about a situation. It was always stifled, like, fix your attitude, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. Like, things that just became automatic. And like, my generation, we were like laughing about it, right? So I'm like Gen X. And so it's like, oh yeah, remember when your parents used to say, stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about? But we didn't really know what we were feeling. Our parents probably went through the same thing, so they weren't really aware. It was like I had an emotion and someone responded or reacted to it, and then I just learned how to behave in a way that's approving to society or my family or my friends or my surroundings. And I don't really have a label for it. I don't have language for it. Like, hey, I'm really upset because it's just I'm feeling an emotion, and someone's telling me to either stop, or that's too much, or they agree because it aligns with their emotion. And I feel like it's such a beautiful time for, I think they're calling the next generation Gen Alpha. Does that sound right? Or
I think so, yes. I believe so.
they have language and they're actually using it. They're using it to say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. And even when us adults who are kind of trained in how we respond to emotions, they still stand up and say, no, that's not what you're going to do to me. You're not going to gaslight me. That's a word that's used a lot now. But I feel like young people, in this era, this generation, are really learning about the language and identifying their emotions. And when they're identifying them, that's like one of the I think that's the key to unlock navigating the emotions. Because if you don't know what you're dealing with, how do you know the next step? How do you proceed, right? Just like any skill, you have to know what it is. What's the language? In school we get the vocabulary words. Oh, so now we know what this word means. Now we can use it in a sentence. So now we have the language for emotion. How do I use it in life? How do I say, parent, I don't appreciate the way you asked me to clean my room, you know? And if they're able to say, I felt frustrated because you didn't listen to the reason why I didn't clean my room at this moment, and they have that language and the courage to actually say something, it's beautiful for the adults to either step back and go, whoa, my kid is a little more emotionally intelligent than I am, or they can kind of learn together. So I think that's a big skill. Like, the awareness is really important, and then navigating it, because once you have it, there's a next step. Like, now what? I know what this is, but how do I how do I manage it? How do I express it? How do I you know, calm myself when I feel this emotion? So those two I feel are like the most important. Of course, everything else comes into play after that, like the empathy, being able to get through conflict resolution, and things like that. So
That's really cool. And it's probably a good segue to my next question, because I feel my next question was actually around, we obviously have spoken before a couple of weeks back, and you mentioned about how children teach educators. Well, sorry, we talk a lot about educators teaching children values,
yes.
about values and modeling values, and and to a lot of extent, parents do, probably more so for many children. But in your experience, you've also found that children are actually teaching their educators and their parents, as you mentioned in the conversation. Can you tell me more about that flow of, I guess, education of values, and how it can flow from children to teachers or to parents? You mentioned about parents, but in an educational environment.
I heard this quote and I absolutely love it. I'm not quite sure who the person who actually said this first, but they said that we as adults teach children all about life, but children are teaching us what life is all about. Right? We kind of get, as adults, we get stuck in, like, this is the way you do things. This is how you manage this. This is how you'll succeed in this, instead of like, life is about learning and dreaming and making mistakes and all of that. You're going to do all of that. I already did all of that. I think sometimes as adults, I'll talk about myself, sometimes afraid to talk about the mistakes, because it makes us look weaker, or we think these children are going to take over if we say we have a weakness, you know? But I think if we just really look at how they learn and play and how they speak to us, I think we would learn a lot more about ourselves. I'll give a couple of personal stories about this. I have a son living with autism. He is now an adult. But when I was navigating just learning about being neurodivergent and learning about a nonverbal person living with autism, it was tough. And as a parent, you want to protect your child. And, they're learning to see their world in ways that others don't. And as a parent, you're going through your own emotions that sometimes we suppress because we're attending to what we call an urgency. Like, my child needs me. I don't have time to think about how I feel. but our emotions are being expressed daily. So one challenge I had when my son was 4 years old was the grocery store. Every time we go in the grocery store, something would set him off. And he would go into a full meltdown on the floor, kicking and screaming, running through the aisles. I'm chasing him. And you know how every parent feels when their child is having a meltdown in public. It's just what's everybody think? What's everybody think? What's everyone think? You know, you're also saying I'm looking after my child, but you're really, what's everyone thinking, right? And this happened a lot. So people, of course, would have their own reactions and responses. And I, as a parent, would get like defensive and like, why are you looking at me? You know, looking around, giving them the evil eye. And just one day in particular, I just happened to glance at and right into the eyes of my son. And I looked at him and I realized he does not care what anyone thinks. He is upset right now and he's going to express himself. And he's not worried about judgments. He's not worried about what someone said as they were passing by. He is in his moment and he is being heard. So without words, my child taught me to not worry about what people think, be in the moment. And yes, I have to learn how to navigate my own emotions where I'm not a disruption to someone. But if I care more about my health, my well being, because if I'm well, I'm going to treat others well. And it just became such a beautiful reminder to me that when I'm in public, no matter if I look perfectly put together, it doesn't matter what people think. If I look like my world is falling apart, it's about what I think about myself and how I'm going to handle the stress or the perfection or the joy or the, you know, whatever it is. And that huge lesson came from my 4-year-old child living with exceptionalities. And
Yeah.
as an adult, I have a daughter who is 25 now, and she kind of helps me take a pause and think, okay, what's going on? And she doesn't say much to me, but when she does, it's like this profound revelation of, Mom, like you need to like sit down for a moment. Are you okay? And it usually sounds just like that. Mom, are you okay? And it just throws me back a bit. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, you seem stressed. Oh, am I displaying stress right now? But her response, instead of what's wrong with you, it helps me to step back and go, okay, self-regulate. I am expressing some type of emotion, and it's she's feeling this energy. What's going on? And sometimes children are the very ones that we need to be listening to. But sometimes when they do something like that, we get even more defensive. And I see that in schools, like, you know, maybe an educator wants the kids to sit down and read or listen, and they don't know the dynamics of what's going on in the group. And then something happens and we fly off the handle and we're like, you are disruptive to the class, but we don't know what happened. And then when the child is expressing, and some children are going to be more expressive than others, and depending on the kind of tendencies that the educator has, they're either going to respond or react. Either I'm the boss, I tell you what to do, or everyone's in trouble, or okay, maybe I'll listen to what you have to say. But if we would actually just take a step back and go, okay, young people, they are more in their feelings, like they show the raw emotion. They're not trying to suppress or hide what's going on. And hopefully they experience that for a long time before we are, before we experience the be quiet and put those feelings away. But as long as they're open and free in their emotions, it's beautiful to be able to be the adult that learns from the kids, right? So yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. I was just going to Jeanette had some comments which were really special, which is quite fortuitous because Jeanette introduced us. So thank you for joining us, Jeanette. It's always lovely to see you on our live stream.
Yes,
yeah, and I agree. Emotional intelligence should be part of school curriculum from start to finish.
Yeah.
So that's really good. Yeah, I love those stories. Thank you for sharing those, Saidat.
No problem.
How can you share some strategies or programs that you've seen that work in teaching emotional skills to youth or adults?
Yeah.
What are you seeing that's working?
Well, I have a friend, a colleague in Ontario. Her name is Sarah Westbrook, and she has such an amazing program in schools and for corporate. It's called U Power. And she talks a lot about owning your emotions, being able to recognize what you're feeling and how to navigate that. She has journals that are able to talk about that. I really love her approach and like having your consequence and what's their end result. And she talks a lot about that because I think sometimes when we have the emotions, we're not even thinking about what's going to happen at the end. What's the end result? What do I want to accomplish? What's the goal in this, or how can I change this? We just throw the emotions to the wind, and whatever happens happens. And sometimes we're seeing success, sometimes we're not. So I love that she has the type of program that really focuses on each emotion and how are you going to get through a tough situation or an exciting situation, and you need to know what the end result will be if you express your emotions in certain ways. So I love that. I love music. I really love music. So I've been really into the affirmations because I feel like with music and movement, children especially really take the messages to heart. It's something that plays over and over again in their mind. You'll hear them singing or reciting something that they've heard in on TV or in a song as they're working. And we know, like, if we have those messages inside of us, then we're going to be able to act them out a lot smoother than just hearing it every once in a while. So Snoop Dogg, of all people, like Snoop Dogg is everywhere right now. It's like even the Olympics. the
Even
Olympics.
in Australia here. Yep.
But Doggyland Kids, it's such an amazing show on YouTube and goes into like your emotions, has a daily affirmation before the start of your day, talks about sibling rivalry, just so different family groups. It's really cool. I love that. And then I also love having young people look at other young people who are doing things that are bringing awareness to emotional health and resilience, right? So there is I believe she's either 13 or 14 now, but she started when she was 9 years old. Her name is Belen Woodard, and her organization is called More Than Peach Project. So she started she says she's a crayon activist. So she's a beautiful African American girl who in I think it was like kindergarten, grade 1, was coloring a picture of herself, and one of her friends said, well, aren't you going to use the skin tone color? And it was peach. And she says, well, that's not my skin color. She goes, well, this is the skin tone color. So she went home and talked to her mom about it, and her mom explained, yes, well, everyone has different shades. It's okay. You can color with whatever crayons you would like. And so she went on a quest to raise awareness about being multicultural in art. So she has one of the first, a world brand of multicultural art for kids, for teachers. She's created curriculum now for teachers to use. She has had like fundraisers that raise awareness to bringing diverse art into schools, and it's so beautiful. And so now she's a teenager now, and she is just building on this brand, and she's training more young people to become this type of activist that cares about art and diversity. And so I think programs like that is something that you can tell your child, hey, let's do this program, let's do that, but you got to find something that also piques their interest. And if they see another young person doing something, they're usually going to say, okay, that means there's hope. There's that hope that I value there. There's hope for me. I can do something. I don't have to wait till I'm listening to the adults tell me what I should be doing. There's a person my age doing the things that they're talking about. So I think programs like that, I always go back to Sesame Street, because even Sesame Street will speak to an adult. This morning, I was on TikTok just scrolling, and there is Cookie Monster at its desk doing like some work, and someone's asking Cookie Monster to take a break. No, I just got one more email to send. No, I've got just one more thing to do. Just give me a moment. And it was like, no, you need to take a break. And it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, if sometimes as adults, we think, oh, this is for the kids. But if we could really just stop, pause, listen, it's ageless. Like, these lessons are ageless. We have to be able to know how to navigate our emotions, and we're all learning in different stages and ages. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
and I
that's cool.
also found there is an actual program for families called Second Step. And that's a beautiful organization. They have curriculum for schools, but also for families from kindergarten all the way through to high school. And so they're able to tell you how to navigate emotional and social intelligence, or social and emotional learning with your child at different ages. So that's a really good one as well.
That's great. Yeah, I'm just reflecting on what you said. Yeah, very, very cool. And I love that mix of music versus inspiring by young people, and children's TV too. Yeah, it's important. Can you speak a little bit about how we teach? I mean, just talking about the crayon activist there.
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit to how we actually teach emotional skills in sort of like diverse cultural or different socioeconomic contexts, and how you've seen that play out, perhaps the challenges, the opportunities, and what's working in those sort of diverse cultural and socioeconomic contexts.
Yeah, thanks for asking. There feels like a bit of pressure on everyone to understand diversity and representation matters, which all of this are facts, and it's long overdue. But I feel that sometimes when we're giving a command as adults, we think we got to go into action, we got to get it done, and then it becomes more performative than it is genuine. So when we are trying to just embrace cultural differences, talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, first of all, we got to know we don't have all the answers. We're talking about emotional intelligence. How do you feel when someone says, what are you going to do to diversify your company? A lot of times people get afraid. And so you need to actually sit with it. Well, I'm kind of scared I'm going to mess up. Okay. See, this is important. And if you were talking to a friend, they would not condemn you about that. They're like, oh, okay. You're afraid. Why are you afraid? Why? Because of what people think. So we have to first sit with our own emotions. Like, I really want this to happen. I really want to teach my child about inclusion. I really want to teach my child to stand up against discrimination of all kinds, and to make sure they learn about different cultures and different ways of living. But I don't know where to start. And the beautiful thing is, when we don't know where to start, there are so many other resources we can go to. We don't have to have all the answers. And I feel as parents, we always feel like we have to have all the answers. So what do? We got to be a little more multicultural. We got to be a little more diverse. So then we start pulling out things that are performative. Let's talk about food. And that happens in education a lot. When we want to talk about diversity, we get into food. Well, there's more than food. Okay, because we have to talk about what a child is living through every day. If we start learning more about our differences, we will be able to appreciate them and also celebrate them and not be afraid of it, right? I think it just starts with our language. Like, I want to learn more about the world, don't you? I mean, our world is this tiny compared to this. What can we discover about the world? Now the curiosity of the child is piqued. Okay, what about the world? Instead of, oh my goodness, I got to talk about black and white, got to talk about racism, I got to talk about, yes, you're going to have those hard conversations. And the older they get, the more, the more direct things need to be. Like, hey, this situation, did you see the microaggressions in that conversation when you were talking to your friend? Do you think like touching their hair that way and making references to food was a good thing to do? Do you think your friend felt a little awkward about that? That's for older people, right? I mean, older youth. If we're talking about young people, we start discovering our world by just presenting different like resources for them. Books are so beautiful because it becomes a curiosity for just all of our differences. We start listening to music, we go to programs in our community that are celebrating different cultural events. All these things play a part in them seeing our differences as a part of our world and not something special, because that seems to happen, right? Especially in education. I do a program about Black History Month for Canadian history. And sometimes it's beautiful that educators are using it, but we got to get past it's only in February. So I started bringing this to light and not going, hey, you need to start talking about Black history as more than just on February. This is performative. That's a defense, and people aren't going to really respond as well as I would like them to. But if I say Black Canadian history is world history, when can you learn more about the world? Every day. And then Black Canadian history is world history. Let's go. Black Canadian history is our history. So now I'm putting like a rhythm to it. And guess what? Their teacher, Black Canadian history is our history. The teacher didn't have to feel uncomfortable because they brought the representation in and said, hey, I don't have all the answers, but here's someone that's going to talk to you about differences. And now they're telling you this is part of the world. It's not a special thing that we're carving out just for this time. This is the time we're learning about it. But now when you go to the playground and you notice someone being teased because of the color of their skin, you know how to respond. Hey, we're all the same. And remember, we just learned about Black history. It's like our history. So we need to work together. All of a sudden, the children are having the language and the skills to be able to get along. Where, when I was growing up, it was basically, we're going to talk about this in history class, and then someone's going to get mad. And we never got past that. It wasn't the open and beautiful dialogue of being able to have someone who's not Black ask me a question and not feel afraid that I'm going to, label them or cancel them because they're asking me a question, or they didn't know that this was learned behavior. And now I have to unlearn this type of microaggression or stereotype. But thanks for being a friend and just letting me know, hey, I don't think you meant this the way it sounds, but let me tell you how it felt for me. There it is, the emotional intelligence. Instead of getting online and telling all of my friends who are going to now attack you, I'm going to come to you and say, hey, this is what I learned. And now this person's going to go somewhere else, say, hey, do you know what I learned today? So yeah, there's so many beautiful ways to bring the world together. And we just got to find it. We got to know that we're going to make mistakes. We got to know that we need help. And when we continue to want to learn and make those mistakes and learn from them and be better, it's just going to make the world a beautiful place. There's my hope.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. I love that reframing. And I think that is just so helpful for anybody who's trying to understand diversity. Thank you. Thank you. I think that's really beautiful. I appreciate that perspective so much. I guess a topic that constantly comes up in education environments that we're seeing a lot, and as a parent, I know I personally have a big interest in the question I'm about to ask. But how are you seeing technology and social media impact emotional development in kids? And well, I guess it's in adults as well, but particularly in youth environments, in with teens or even pre-teens. Where are you seeing, how, in your experience, what role is technology and social media playing?
Yeah, well, personally, I feel it's twofold. We are receiving so much more information about the world than we ever did with our encyclopedias. But at the same time, we're so distracted that we're not present in the moment. And that's for young people as well. But I also feel that we as adults sometimes are too afraid of the future, that we don't see the good, we see only the negative. Well, let's go back to when I'm in my 50s, okay? So pagers were a problem when I was in high school. You can have a pager because, you're probably dealing drugs, right? So, but we're laughing at it now, but this is basically kind of how we're dealing with tech, right? Like, oh, look what's happening. AI is here. The kids are not going to learn anything. Oh, yeah, there is a tendency to rely on something a little more than you would if you didn't have it. But let's talk about the things that we use as adults now that we didn't have when we were growing up. And we have a tendency to rely on it. The microwave. You know what they said about the microwave when I was growing up? Oh, you can't have that in your house. It's going to do this. It's going to do that to your body, to your brain, to your, like, okay. So
We're still here.
Yeah. So I feel that we do have to, of course, we have to do our research. We need to be candid and honest and real with our kids about the use of technology. Because although they know how to navigate it more than we do, they don't know the repercussions. They're not, their cognitive development isn't of such that they understand consequences or even the evil that is out there. The misinformation that can turn their life upside down. They only see things in the moment. They see things like, oh, that's funny. So if that's funny here, it must be funny at school. Those are the things they don't understand how to navigate. It's like, I'm doing a show about, are you going to power up or debuff this year? So I'm using like this gaming lingo to tell them, how can you power up at school? And what is debuff? A debuff is an effect in a game that actually makes your character weaker. Well, at school, it's when you don't set goals for your school year, when you use words to belittle or attack someone. And then I actually referenced the Olympians, Phil Kim, the gold medal winner for breaking. So talk about how he felt as the winner and even still struggling with self-doubt. But then I go into what is a debuff. So I have a audio clip of Ray Gun talking about the hate that she received. And when I show her picture, I know what's going to happen in the crowd. I know that kids are going to have opinions. Even the adults are going to have opinions because, yes, she can be critiqued for her style of the art of breaking. She can, understand that people do have questions. But when you get into the buff of bullying, it changes everything. When she can't even go anywhere without someone literally laughing in her face. So I use that as like, this is something you've probably seen. You're probably, when I start the dance party today, you're probably going to try to use these kangaroo moves as a joke. But let's talk about it. If you had something you considered a skill and someone displayed it to the entire world as a joke, you would not respond in this way. You would not want your friends to be affected by what someone else thinks of you. If this situation happened in a school setting, it would be overwhelmingly harmful. So let's talk about this and decide how you're going to treat others, not only online, but in this school. So I feel like if we go, and then also if we could go to our socials and actually have fun with kids, like parents, laugh with your kids. I think there's this new trend where parents and a child are talking about different, the pop culture lingo, and the kid goes, well, the parents like, what's this mean? Like, what is Riz? Oh, that's like when you're trying to flirt with someone. Well, what's this skippity toilet mean? And then the parent is like, what are you talking about? That's fun. But they're learning with your child as well. So go with the good times. Don't always do the, oh, it's so scary. Because when we display that it's scary, of course it resonates with them too. And either they're like challenging us, like, oh, well, why is it scary? I want to find out more. The curiosity sets in, or they're even afraid of what's going to happen. And then when something happens like cyberbullying, they may not be so willing to openly talk to you about it because they've already heard you in the doomsday. This is so bad. And now the child is in trouble and they feel afraid to go to the parent to say, I'm in trouble. I started something online. I don't know what to do. So I feel like if we can just, have a balance, it's going to be, it's going to be all right.
Yeah, it's a better approach. No, I appreciate that perspective. Thank you, Saidat. Yeah, I could talk all day about ray gun and that scenario. We felt it very much here in Australia. It was, nobody was talking about anything else for a few days, I think. But yeah, it's a really interesting analogy from a bullying perspective, isn't it?
Yeah.
Saidat, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I could talk all day, but we're probably coming up for time. I appreciate those who've stuck with us for the conversation. Janique, I think you're still here. Those who've watched the replay, please follow Saidat online. Is Instagram your best platform?
Instagram and Twitter.
Instagrams and Twitter.
Perfect. Yeah, our website has crashed for some reason. We're trying to work on that. So, but it is saidat.ca. But you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Saidat. Thank you for watching, everyone.
Thank you for sharing this space and sharing knowledge with the world. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Saidat. That's beautiful. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Yep.